You are listening to A Scary State, and this week we're talking about New Mexico, or Nueva Mexico. I don't know how to say New Mexico in Spanish, but I think that's close.
That sounded good.
So, Lauren?
See? Kenzie? There's no way you're going to know how to say that.
Watch. You can edit all this out later. Oh, God. Vamos a asustarnos. That was terrible.
Let's get scary.
That's what I tried to say.
I know.
But I can't read in English, let alone another language.
I don't know why you just didn't listen to it.
Because it won't let me, vamos a asustarnos. I'm going to stop before I say something offensive.
You sound almost as bad as, my mom when she tries to learn a language. There was one time she was, playing it. And so she would listen to what they were saying and she would try to repeat it. And it didn't sound anything like it. And I was like, how are you not sounding like that at all? And she goes, that's what it sounds like. I'm like, no, it's not.
I'm like Joey from Friends.
Yes.
Trying to learn
learning French.
Sale le bleu.
That's 100% you.
Yeah. Yep. It's not my fault scary is a hard word in Spanish.
I guess maybe. I'll give you that excuse.
Yeah. I tried.
You tried.
I tried to be culturally inclusive. I just don't know Spanish. I barely know English.
I haven't taken a Spanish class in, 10 plus years?
Same, but I work with a lot of Spanish-speaking students, so you'd think I would be better about this.
You really should be, but... So how's Jazz Fest?
Oh, it was so much fun. The weather was perfect.
Ugh.
Last year was hot and sticky and uncomfy.
Is it always the same time every year?
Yeah, usually last weekend in April, first weekend in May. And we
Down
went
in New Orleans.
Nylons. It was a lot of fun. Like I said, beautiful weather. Did get a little bit of a sunburn, but nothing
You don't look too
crazy.
sunburned.
Yeah, it's mostly on my back. Saw Joan Jett.
Nice.
Such a badass.
Yeah.
She was so good. It was awesome. It was kind of cool too to see. So we were walking around, and on one side of the festival ground on the main stage was going to be Luke Combs.
Oh.
And then on the other side on that stage was Joan Jett. And so as my sister and I were just making a lap waiting for it to start, the crowd of people at Luke Combs was drastically different than the crowd of people at Joan Jett. And I don't even mean just age-wise.
Yeah.
Even people that were our age were very punk rock, that kind of thing, or they were older and stuff like that. And then Luke Combs had the kind of people you would see at a Luke Combs concert.
Right.
So it was,
He is incredible, though.
Yes. And unfortunately, they're playing at the same time because they're both big names. So
Yeah.
they don't have headliners go necessarily one after the other. It's usually kind of simultaneously.
Yeah.
Because the festival ends at 7.
Oh, wow.
It's only 11 to 7.
That is very short.
It's nice.
That is nice.
It is nice.
That's very nice.
Yeah. So,
Because that's not going to be like the one we're going to next month.
well, it's just a regular concert.
Warped Tour?
That
Is 11 to 11.
which is fine.
Yeah.
Because with Jazz Fest, it's kind of tough because unless you know a lot of the local and smaller bands, you're kind of just bebopping around.
Yeah.
So this year we went a little bit later so that we didn't die of heat beforehand.
Right.
Got some good jambalaya.
Ugh.
Very yummy food. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a good time.
Wow.
My grandma picked us up. Took us almost an hour to get home
Oh my
because of
gosh.
traffic.
How far away do they live?
20 minutes,
Oh my gosh.
if that. Yeah.
Jeez.
And then we did some shopping on Saturday. Got some beignets.
Ugh, I saw your post.
Ugh, so yummy.
It looked
yummy.
so messy, but so
It
yummy.
was so messy. But we didn't get it on us.
I'm shocked.
And my sister was wearing a black shirt, too.
I am extra shocked.
I almost, I teased her and I went, as if I was going to blow all the dust on her or the powder on her. And she was like, no. I laughed so hard. I was like, I can't believe you thought I was going to do that. And then later.
Why would I waste the powder?
Right. Well, as we were walking somewhere else, I sneezed. I was like, damn it. I was really hoping to do that when we were eating the beignets.
All over the beignets.
I just wanted the powdered sugar to go all over her. So we went to Pat O'Brien's, which is a famous bar has known for their hurricanes.
Yes, I have heard of the name and I have heard of that term.
Very yummy. Then we went to like a hole in the wall bar. Accidentally watched the Kentucky Derby.
Oh,
We had just gotten there, we got our drinks, and then all of a sudden it started and people were going crazy. And I'm just like, I hope all the horses have fun. Well, and it was all muddy too, and I felt bad for this one horse because he was like really behind. And I was like, but you can do it, buddy. You're here. Apparently, all of the horses in the Kentucky Derby this year are descendants of Secretariat.
wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah. So, and got to spend time with my grandparents, which is always lovely.
Yeah. You did Jazz Fest on Friday?
Yeah. It's different people, different days.
Yeah.
And out of all the days of the weekend that we were going, I was like, I really want to see Joan Jett.
Yeah.
Like, when am I going to get that opportunity again?
No, yeah, absolutely.
So we went on Friday. Obviously, we were very tired.
Yeah.
By the end of it. And so I started falling asleep first, and I twitch a little bit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And also, the more comfortable I am sleeping next to you, the more relaxed I am, the more I move. And so I accidentally hit my sister. And I woke, like when I hit her, I like woke up. I was like, sorry. I flipped over. She hadn't fallen asleep yet. But she got me back because in the middle of the night when we were sleeping, she had rolled over onto her back and went to go put her elbows up behind her head and clocked me with her elbow. So
Joe sometimes will sleep like that. Like, I'll look over and he has his like arm up and I'm like, oh, that's going to come down and smack me. So I just move it down.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I don't need to be knocked out in my sleep.
So we didn't really get our day started until like after 3 o'clock.
Oh, sometimes that's so nice, though.
It was really nice. And yeah, we did shopping. We did as much of the New Orleans things as, we like to do regularly because there's not much left for us to do that we haven't already done.
Except when you go with me.
Well, right.
Then we'll go do all the things.
And that's totally fine. My sister wanted to go to this like tower thing, and you go to the top and like it gives you these really pretty views. My grandma's like, oh yeah, like that's so great. She's like, well, she doesn't want to go. And I was like, yeah, it's up high.
There's heights, no thank you.
Right. And they're like, but it's inside. I'm like, okay. And they're like, you take an elevator up. And I'm like, exactly.
Oh, well then you and I won't be going there.
Right. And I'm just like, taking the elevator up there is half the battle. Then I'm up there.
I'm taking something that I don't like up to a higher point of something that I don't like.
Yeah. And then you want me to like go up to a window and like look when I'm already in the midst of a panic attack from being on the elevator, also knowing I have to go back down.
Yeah, no thanks.
No.
Is it like a closed elevator?
I couldn't tell you. We didn't go.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
So,
because when I went to go visit our friend, she went to Liberty, and Liberty has that really tall glass building thing.
okay.
So we get on, and it's just like a closed elevator at first. And I was like, oh, I hate this. So we got on, and then it turned into a glass elevator. So I was fine with that. But then it's glass up this glass thing going really high up. And I was like, ooh, I also don't like heights. Oh my God, that's how I felt when we went to the Space Needle. Because you're, again, in like a glass elevator going up. It's like half glass. So you can like look out the front.
Yeah.
And then you get out and you're in the Space Needle and it's so high up.
Yeah. I love views.
The views are beautiful, but then you look down and you're like, oh. And part of it twirls, like spins, not fast, but it's going slowly. But so you're moving.
I think this one does too.
I don't like it.
Yeah. No, neither do I.
And then there's like a glass floor. And for whatever reason, it feels safer to crawl.
Yes.
So I crawled on the glass floor to the middle, took a picture, and then crawled back. So I was like, if I stand, I'm going to fall.
Correct.
If I crawl, I'm safe.
Correct. Yes. I completely understand that logic.
Yeah.
100%. Like, oh my God.
But it was like one of the things, because when I was in Seattle, I was like, I have to do it. I have to do the Space Needle. I can't come here and not do it.
I would like to go
So
on like a riverboat thing. Because I don't remember the last time we did that.
Ooh, I'll do that with you.
Yeah.
Whenever we go.
Yeah.
Can we stay with your grandparents?
Yes.
And have a wonderful time.
Yes. I was just talking to my sister about this because she said one of her people in her life was also like, oh, I've never been. I really want to go, like blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah. Every time I mention to Lauren that I'm going, she likes to remind me she's never been.
Yep.
So.
And I will do it forever until I go. And then once I go and you say you're going, I'll be like, oh, I remember when I went.
Yes, I will take you and it will be fun and we'll do all the things.
Oh, it'll be magical and spooky and amazing.
Yeah. Oh, did you see my text about the house? Did I? I didn't send it to you, did I?
No,
Oh, no,
you
because I
didn't.
wanted to tell you on here.
Oh!
So as we were driving through and my grandma was going to drop us off in the French Quarter, I didn't see it, unfortunately, but my sister saw a house for sale and it had like a list of like all the things that it had. And at the bottom, it said it was haunted.
Oh,
I was
I
like,
love how they
that's
do
cool.
that.
I was like, that's so cool.
We should totally go. Okay. Listen.
No.
No, listen. We'll go to, when we go to New Orleans, we'll
Mhm.
go tour some houses. We'll pretend to be a couple and that we're looking for a house. And then we can go into a haunted house. We won't.
Why?
Why not?
It-
We'll see if we get the vibes, the spooky vibes. We'll just be going in. We're just going to tour the house like we're buying it. We're not going to buy it.
When have I ever, or you ever, read a story of a haunted place and then you follow it up with, would you go here? Have I ever said yes?
But that's after you've heard the history of all the ghosts. If it just says haunted, you're not going to know what kind of ghosts are in there. We can go in.
That doesn't matter.
You might not even know that it's haunted.
Clearly I will if it has to list it.
Maybe you won't get the feels. The haunted feels.
Oh.
I think it would be fun.
I will stay outside while you go and you let me know if you got the feels.
Okay. I could do that.
Okay.
As long as I'm with someone. I'm not going in there by myself.
Well, then I guess you're not going in because I don't know who else is going with us.
A realtor.
Touche. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to get a whole realtor just to show us a haunted house.
Maybe if it was like an open house.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm thinking, like an open house.
And there was like a bunch of people walking around.
I'm not going to ask a realtor to take us to a haunted house and then be like, peace, thank you. It'll have to be an open house.
Yeah, there's a lot of houses that like every time, because my grandma was a realtor, so she knows
No.
everything about everything there is in that city.
Mm-hmm.
So she's pointing out, oh, so-and-so lived here and so-and-so lived here.
Oh, how fun.
And there's this one place that's close to their house. It looks like a fucking castle.
Oh,
So I was like, who lives in the castle, Grandma? This lawyer, and he married this Russian lady, and they had a kid. Like, she knows the whole lore behind it.
wow. Oh,
All
we're going to
that
have so
stuff.
much fun when I come.
Yeah.
And she shows me everything.
Yeah. So she knows all the good things going on.
Amazing. Well, I'm so
be-
glad you had a good time.
Yeah. I just love that city so much.
Ugh, yeah.
You know, it feels like home. It's like a home away from home.
Oh.
You know, the roads are crazy. Oh my gosh. We walked into one store. You know, the book Goodnight Moon?
Mhm.
This one was Goodnight Pothole. There are so many potholes.
Oh, that's so funny.
And like, there's so many potholes that like people will like decorate some of them because they're just like so bad and so deep that like you're also kind of like, hey, don't go over here.
yeah.
I mean, the roads are fucking terrible.
Mm.
Even the sidewalks too, because those trees are like, I think not, and have like yanked up the concrete, and we're like, excuse me,
Oh, yeah.
I am here first.
These are my roots.
Yes, so it's you definitely got to watch your step for sure. But it's,
Good thing I look down when I walk most of the time anyway.
me too. Me too. If I look up, I start to lose balance.
Yeah, same. I get nervous.
Yes.
It's like I'm always looking down.
Yes.
I have to look down when I go down the stairs, anything.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I promise I will take you.
Thank you. All right, should we get into New Mexico?
Please.
All right.
Oh, actually, what's kind of cool? Sorry, this has to do with it. So every year at Jazz Fest, there's usually like an associated theme, like of some sort of culture with it.
Oh, cool.
And so this year was Mexico.
How fitting.
Yeah.
How fun.
It was really cool. Like we saw a lot of like, you know, of the skulls and things like that are close with like the Day of the Dead. And there was these really pretty women wearing like those traditional like white dresses.
Oh,
and
pretty.
things like that. It was really cool.
Oh, that's so
It was
cool.
really awesome.
That's really cool
So,
how they do that.
Yeah. And they have like the food that goes with it
Ugh.
and just like a bunch of different stuff. And they have like others, like they'll have like Native American stuff too. They'll have like African type, not exhibits, but like there's like one stage that's called like the Congo stage. And so they'll have like African type displays and like crafts and things like that. So that's kind of always part of it.
Yeah.
And then they usually have something, another country and like their heritage and culture
that's
and
so
things like that
cool.
also associated with it. That's why it's the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival or something like that.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah. So this
Oh,
year
I
was
love
Mexico.
that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So it was really cool. So now you can get into New Mexico.
So when you think of New Mexico, You might picture adobe villages, breathtaking desert landscapes, and vibrant southwestern culture. But beneath the Land of Enchantment lies a much darker past, one shaped by violence, corruption, resistance, and tragedy. From bloody feuds in the Old West and political conspiracies to masked vigilantes and eerie folklore, New Mexico's history is filled with haunting stories that still echo through its canyons and ghost towns. In this segment, we're uncovering some of the state's most unsettling chapters, including the infamous Lincoln County War, the shadowy Santa Fe Ring, the masked rebellion of the Goros Blancas, fears of witchcraft, and the devastating Dawson coal mine disaster. I almost got the Santa Fe car, but I didn't. It has really good ratings, and I sat in it, and I was like, this is nice. Like, that's cool. And then that's when I accidentally sat in the Bronco, and I was like, this is it.
I accidentally sat in the Bronco.
Well, Mom was like, just sit in this while we were like waiting for the guy to come out. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay. So I sat and I was like, oh no. And then guess what? I got a Bronco.
Here we are.
In the late 1870s, southeastern New Mexico became a war zone, not between nations, but between rival business factions in what came to be known as the Lincoln County War. The fight started as a feud between two competing mercantile interests: the established Murphy-Dolan faction, who had the law and the local government in their pocket, and the upstart Tunstall-McSween partnership, who challenged their economic monopoly. Things turned deadly when John Tunstall was murdered, sparking outrage and retaliation from his young ranch hands, one of whom was Billy the Kid. What happened was a violent, years-long series of shootouts, ambushes, and revenge killings, with law enforcement often taking sides. The Lincoln County War highlighted just how lawless the American West could be, and launched Billy the Kid into legend. Beneath New Mexico's sweeping desert skies lurked one of the most corrupt political machines of the 19th century, the Santa Fe Ring. The shadowy network of lawyers, politicians, and land speculators manipulated the legal system to snatch up massive tracts of land, often at the expense of Mexican American and Native American communities. Using forged documents, legal trickery, and friendly judges, the ring grew rich while the original landowners were pushed into poverty. The corruption was so widespread that even Congress launched investigations. But by then, the damage had been done. An entire generation of New Mexicans had lost their ancestral homes, and the Santa Fe Ring walked away unscathed.
So
I love when you give like little like tidbits about what it is.
well, because like even though I have ChatGPT help me write it, I do like read about it so that I can do that.
Yeah. No, I like that.
So basically, how this started was when America took over New Mexico and like added it as part of the territory. Spain had given these like land grants and things like that to like its citizens with the idea that it would be acknowledged or whatever.
Okay.
And here we are. It wasn't.
Obviously.
They're like, no, you don't get to keep that. And they took it from all of them. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
By the late 1800s, Hispanic farmers in northern New Mexico had had enough. Land grants that had been promised to them for generations was being swallowed up by Anglo settlers, railroads, and speculators. Why is that such a hard word for me?
I don't know.
And speculators, often with the help of corrupt courts. In response, a masked resistance group called the Goros Blancas, or Whitecaps, emerged. These vigilantes raided properties under cover of darkness, burning fences, slashing railroad ties, and sabotaging ranches that encroached on communal land. They left behind notes warning land thieves to stay away. Though the Goros Blancas eventually tried to enter politics to defend their rights through the legal system, they were marginalized and silenced. Their struggle, however, remains a powerful reminder of the long fight for land justice in New Mexico.
This was like stuff that went into like the 1960s.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's wild to think about that stuff, like how recent a lot of it was.
Yes.
While New Mexico didn't have Salem-style witch trials, it certainly had its share of witchcraft fears. In small villages throughout the state, especially in the 19th and early 20th century, accusations of brujeria, witchcraft, could destroy reputations and even lead to violence. Folk healers, known as curanderos, often walked a fine line between being respected and feared, while women accused of being brujas might be blamed for everything from poor harvest to mysterious illnesses. In some cases, suspected witches were driven from community. What was that?
Farted. Sorry, it's all the cheese.
In some cases, suspected witches were driven from communities and subjected to exorcism rituals.
As long as you can't hear the sound, I don't care if you keep that in.
Even today, tales of La Bruja persist in New Mexican lore, echoing centuries of fear and suspicion rooted in colonial superstition and cultural clashes. Dawson, New Mexico was once a booming coal town until it became the site of two of the worst mining disasters in U.S. history. On October 22nd, 1913, a massive explosion ripped through Dawson Stag Canyon Mine No. 2, killing 263 miners. Most of them were immigrants from Italy, Greece, and Mexico who had come to New Mexico chasing the American dream. The explosion was so powerful it shook buildings miles away.
Wow.
10 years later, tragedy struck again on February 8th, 1923. Another explosion in Mine No. 1 killed 123 more miners.
1923, 123.
Ooh.
Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo.
A lot of things ending in 3. Because 1913,
Oh,
263.
yeah, look at that.
1923, 123.
Ooh.
Ew, that's kind of creepy. Dawson Cemetery is still marked by rows of identical iron crosses, a haunting monument to lives lost underground. The town never fully recovered, and today it's a ghost town, its tragic legacy buried in soot and silence.
It is very difficult to be doing the state facts for one state while also having to do posts for the last state. I get myself very confused.
I have a coworker who always asks me, like, what state is scary this week? And so I'll tell him one, I'm like, no, wait. And then I tell him another one, I'm like, no, wait. Because it's like we're doing research for one,
Yep.
we're editing another one,
Yep.
and then we're recording another one.
Yes.
And I'm like, I'm so confused with what state we're on.
Yes. And especially because like they've all been in the same area.
Right now, yes.
So that has also made it very tricky.
Well, because we did your 3-parter, so we moved the states around.
Yep.
So they all just kind of happened to be in the same area for a little bit.
Yeah. So that's kind of been tripping me up a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Because yeah, he'll ask me something. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what's being released. I don't know what's going on.
I was looking up a story at work and I was like, anyone know anything scary that happened in New Mexico? And they're like, why? And I was like, oh, it's for the podcast. They're like, oh, that's a very niche thing. I don't know. And I was like, I found something. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Thank you for your help. Yeah, I have to be really careful. Like, I'll only look things up, like, typically, like, during my lunch or if I happen to have extra time during planning.
Yeah.
But, like, I have to be careful if I, like, there was one time where we had a bunch of, like, indoor recesses. And since I have recess duty, like, I'm not going to just sit there and watch the kids play. So, like, I'll bring my computer.
Right.
But, like, I have to be very careful that, like, the children don't see these, like,
oh my gosh,
creepy headlines.
Awful headlines.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm like, nope, nothing. So I gotta pee again. So we gotta
my God.
wrap this up. What spooky tea you pouring, Lauren?
Okay, so when I started my research for this, I found an unsolved / murder case, like an unsolved mystery murder kind of thing.
Okay.
And I was like, ooh, this is awesome. Clicked on an article. The first line of the article said that any mention of the death of this thing could bring bad luck. And I said,
Oh no.
I don't need that right now.
No.
So I'm just not going to talk about it. I can't even remember what it was, so that's good. So we're not even going to mention it.
Okay.
So I found an urban legend instead. Because one of the articles is like, it's bad luck to mention it, but we're going to take our chances. And I said, I am not going to take my chances.
No.
So I'm going to be talking about La Mala Hora. So La Mala Hora is an urban legend of New Mexico folklore that was first described in 1910 by Aurelio Espinosa. You don't need to remember that name.
Okay.
The name La Mala Hora means the evil hour, the bad time, or the evil one.
That makes sense.
Yep. So chances are you won't have to worry about having a run-in with a La Mala Hora, a wicked spirit or evil demon, unless you are traveling alone on a country road around midnight.
I love when these things are just so specific.
I know. So
About,
like
where you have to be in the exact time.
pretty easy to just completely avoid it altogether.
So like if you and I were together and we were on a country road at midnight, we'd be fine.
In New Mexico.
In New Mexico, we'd be fine.
Maybe. As long as we avoid country roads at midnight in New Mexico, we'll be good.
So you don't have to necessarily be alone.
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
But alone is typically when the story is scarier.
True.
So this creature lurks in the darkness at the crossroads,
Would
waiting.
you believe me if I came to you and I said, like, I saw a thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why would I not believe you?
I don't know.
Of course I would believe you. I'd want you to talk about it all the time.
I don't believe half these people.
I would believe you.
I believe you.
Thank you.
I don't believe them.
Like, whenever I have kids and they tell me, like, Mom, there's something scary in my room. Okay, sleep in here with me. We're not going to go into your room right now.
That is the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do.
I know, but I'm not going to be the parent who's like, oh, it's nothing. Oh my God, I heard this scary story. This one's real. This girl was babysitting,
Mhm.
and the little kid was like, I think there's a monster under the bed. Like, can you look under the bed? So babysitter, like, agreeing to look under the bed is like, no, there's no one under, like, there's no monster under the bed. And the kid's like, no, but can you just check? And she goes, okay, fine. Looks, there was a man hiding under the bed. She was fine. The kids got out. Police arrested the man. But, like, oh my God, I would never be able to look under a bed again.
I can't.
I'd sleep on a mattress on the floor forever.
I still can't look under a bed.
Thankfully, like I've said before, my bed is so low, like, you can't fit under it.
Yeah, these days, like with my new bed frame, I feel like it's too low for a person.
Yeah. Like, I've tried squeezing under the bed to get something, and I can't.
Right. Like,
So
when Millie couldn't really get under the bed, I knew that, like, I was like, yeah. Okay.
this is safe.
Yes.
Okay, so back to this creature.
Yes.
So it lurks in the darkness at the crossroads, waiting for an unwary traveler.
Crossroads of what?
Just a crossroads, like a crossroad where two roads cross. It's called a crossroads.
Thank you so much for explaining. So it can be any crossroads. doesn't
Any
matter.
crossroads in New Mexico.
On a country road at midnight.
Yeah.
Got it.
So it'll be waiting for an unwary traveler to unfortunately cross its path. According to some, it is even more feared than the devil himself.
Mm-hmm.
So picture this.
Okay.
You're
I'm
driving
trying.
down a long, winding road late at night alone.
It's winding now.
Yeah, because that's scarier too.
Mm.
Nothing to accompany you other than the whoosh of the air passing by your windows as you're cruising.
Mm-hmm.
The hours are ticking very close to midnight. Suddenly, up in front of you in the middle of the road at the crossroads, you see a figure. It appears to look like a large black lump,
A lump?
like a lock of wool or a whole fleece.
I'm sorry, this is scarier than the devil?
It is constantly moving and changing shape. Yes,
But
scarier
it's a
than the
lump.
devil. It's a lump.
That's changing shape
Yes.
into more
Oh, don't worry.
types of lumps?
I'll get into what it looks like.
Okay.
The terrifying shape it takes.
You know what there's it's in some, I think it's in the Addams Family or something like that. There's like this like monster thing, and it's like has long hair from like head to toe, has a little hat on.
Oh, Cousin It.
That.
Yeah.
That's what I'm imagining right now.
Yeah. No.
I know, but that's what I'm picturing. See, my brain can't go scary when you haven't seen scary things. Just turns everything into a fucking cartoon.
This creature, this figure, also starts
lump.
This lump also starts rapidly growing larger than smaller. Before it takes the appearance of a ghostly black shroud.
A what?
A black shroud. It's like a cape, like a hood kind of thing. Or a large black cotton ball. I needed to get a kick out of that one.
Oh, man. This sounds great.
Anyone who is unfortunate enough to set eyes on this creature runs the risk of being driven permanently insane. The creature, once it knows you're focused on it, will then try to hypnotize and paralyze anyone who encounters it. When it attacks, it will rush towards the sorry victim, enveloping them and then suffocating them.
That's not nice of the cotton ball.
The following morning, the poor soul is found dead on the side of the road.
With like hair in their mouths, because this thing sounds like hairy.
It's not hairy. It's fluffy. Okay. But then here we go.
Same difference.
There are times when it transforms into a wicked woman, the female personification of evil, though she seldom appears in human form.
She's mostly a cotton ball.
Yeah. But that's the not scary version of her. The scary version is when she's like a person figure.
Mm-hmm.
She's either seen wearing black clothing or white clothing, with her long hair hanging long and unkempt either way.
Her long hair hanging long.
Her dark hair hanging long and unkempt either way. She floats just above the ground, gliding along with her feet barely hovering inches off the ground. Her clothing color is important and has different meanings associated with it.
That's either white or black.
Well, yes, but each means something different.
So are you still seeing the same person?
You're seeing her, but based on what she wants to, like, tell you or, like, show you will be based on her clothing color.
Oh, interesting.
I'll get into it, don't you worry.
I wasn't.
There have been men who have noticed her as a beautiful, long-haired woman wearing white, walking along the side of the road at night. Men who encounter her are so taken by her beauty and seductive way that they end up following her mindlessly, paying absolutely no attention to where she's leading them.
I would love to be so pretty that men follow me mindlessly.
Yeah, me too. Some of those she led were led off of the edge of a ravine, falling to their deaths down below.
But I thought she was at a crossroads.
Yes, but the crossroads can have, like,
New
ravines.
Mexico is a fucking desert.
There can be ravines. Doesn't New Mexico have part of the Grand Canyon?
I don't think so.
Or is that Arizona?
It's Arizona.
Oh, close enough. Some men who have met La Mala Hora say that when they started following her, they completely lost their sense of direction.
So it sounds like a man got in trouble and made up this cotton ball woman.
She was wicked, I tell you. If they were
Led me
carrying
astray.
If they were carrying a light, it would suddenly stop working. Some were lucky enough to actually look at her feet, noting that she was floating rather than walking. Some even noticed that her toes were pointed backwards.
Ew.
That snapped them out of their trance, the trance-like state they were in, allowing them to escape. While wearing white, she is more docile. So she's kind of fine when she's wearing white. But
Can
when
she change instantly?
I don't think so. I think she knows kind of what she's trying to portray to you.
So when she gets up and gets stressed,
She knows, yeah.
she knows.
When she is wearing black, she is more dangerous, fierce, and aggressive, and in this state, she is usually considered an omen of death.
Oh,
If you encounter the spirit in her human form in black at the crossroads, it usually means that you or someone you know is going to die.
okay.
In Monterey, New
Aren't we all eventually going to die?
Eminently. Very suddenly. Very
Okay.
soon.
Okay.
It's imminent. It's like there. Yeah. In Monterey, Mexico, so northern Mexico area, La Mala Hora is said to have a face like a horse and will run alongside your car.
So we have a cotton ball.
Mhm.
We have a woman.
Mhm.
We have a horse.
Yep. She is also an omen of death in this version, regardless of what color clothes she's wearing.
The horse lady.
Yeah.
Got it.
Just the horse lady you don't ever want to see.
Okay.
People in New Mexico hate talking about her and often refuse, replying with just "es cosa mala," which, when asked about it, which translates to "it is an evil thing."
Mm.
So where does this come from, this whole legend? So apparently the legend of La Mala Hora is that of a vengeful spirit. In the 1800s, a young woman was accused of witchcraft. Ooh,
Maybe it's the same person.
fitting! Cursed and banished from her village, she vowed revenge on those who had wronged her. Her spirit is now the embodiment of darkness and malevolence. But another version says that La Mala Hora was once a woman of great beauty and passion. She had hair as dark as night and eyes that sparkled like stars. She lived in a small village and she was able to let her spirit run wild and free. But the man she loved betrayed her, and she was then ostracized from her community. Because of this, her rage and grief consumed her. When she died, her soul wasn't able to find peace, and a curse was born, transforming her into La Mala Hora,
Cotton ball horse lady.
Cotton Ball Horse Lady. So there are a few people who supposedly have actually had experiences with La Mala Hora.
And lived to tell a tale.
They did, yes.
Well, they had to. That's why we know it.
Right. So this first one is the most popular and the most well-known regarding this legend.
Okay.
So there's a woman named Jane whose husband was away on business in Chicago.
Do we know when this occurred?
Nope.
Okay.
Can't tell you that.
Cool.
So not wanting to be alone at night, she decided to go stay with a friend in Santa Fe. Her friend Isabella was also going through a divorce and was just not doing well. It had to be after cars were invented. So Jane wanted to be there to comfort her and make sure that she was okay. Jane called her husband and told him that she thought she should go visit
And
Isabella. And phones. And check in on her, and her husband agreed, so Jane got her things together, packed her car, and set off just before midnight. Naturally, she had to drive down a lonely and deserted highway. After a while, she approached a small crossroads. Suddenly, a dark shape appeared in front of her car. Jane screamed in fright and slammed on her brakes just in time. But when she looked up, nothing was there. She breathed a sigh of relief and looked around as she tried to get her breathing under control. But as she turned to her right,
No.
she saw something that almost gave her a heart attack.
Ah.
Right beside her window, staring at her,
Oh, God, no.
was an old lady.
Oh, my God, no.
She had a twisted face of an old demon, glowing red eyes, and short, pointed teeth. She made eye contact with the woman, who then began clawing at the car window, trying to break the gas. Jane screamed and slammed on the accelerator. For a few terrible moments, the demonic lady ran alongside the car, clawing at the window the whole time. But eventually, the car reached a high enough speed, and the demon lady fell behind. Jane stared at her rearview mirror at the lady on the street. She watched with terror as the demon grew taller and taller, until it was as large as a tree. Still watching, she saw a red light swirl around the old lady. She then pointed at Jane, her mouth moving, though Jane could not make out the words. That is the last thing Jane saw of the demon before she quickly jerked her attention back to the road in front of her.
That doesn't sound like a fluffy cotton ball.
No, see? That's what I'm saying. It's scary.
So where'd this cotton ball idea come from?
That's it might just be like you see it.
Mm,
You don't want to see it in any other form.
okay.
Eventually, Jane made it to Isabella's house, and when she did, she ran inside and locked the door behind her. In a panicked voice, Jane told Isabella all about her terrifying drive and what she had experienced at the crossroad. Isabella let out a terrified gasp. It must have been... Thank you. It must have been La Mala Hora, Isabella said. The evil one. They say she only appears at crossroads when someone is about to die. Jane was suddenly overcome with a feeling of dread and impending doom, and she started to cry. Isabella tried to comfort her and told her to go to bed and that the next morning the two of them would head back to Jane's house together so that Jane wouldn't have to drive alone.
Question.
Yes.
If I have this encounter and you know that it's the legend and you know that us seeing it might mean that there's death coming, would you tell me?
Would you want to know?
No.
Then I won't tell you.
All right.
Okay.
Would you?
Would I want to know?
Uh-huh.
Probably not.
Okay.
Like if I were to go to a fortune teller, I don't want to know the bad things.
No.
I just want to know the good things.
Yeah.
I don't want to, because then I'll be stressing and I stress too much. I don't need that
And
in
it
my
could
life.
become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So that night, she didn't sleep at all. Finally, the next morning, she and Isabella made their way back to Jane's home. But they made sure to take a different route, one that wouldn't take them by the crossroads again.
And don't fucking go at midnight.
Right. It's the next morning, so they're going at daytime as well. So they're just like checking to make sure.
Sure.
Not crossing it, not near midnight. Should be good. When Jane and Isabella finally arrived home, they found a police car waiting in the driveway.
Oh, no.
The officers approached Jane, asking her for her name, then broke the horrible news. Her husband had been mugged on his way back to his hotel the night before. He had been shot in the head and was killed instantly. It had happened just after midnight.
Ugh. Rude.
So, she was wearing black. Bad omen.
Bad
At the
omen.
crossroads telling you someone's going to die.
Is it always... Because, like, here's my thing. It's even more unsettling if it's like, is it me or is it someone else?
Right.
Because it's almost like I would rather it be me
Right.
than someone else.
Because then you're kind of seeing it and you're like, oh, well, had a
Right.
good run. All right, so I have another one. A man named Thomas Kaufman collected this story in 1967 from a storyteller who refers to La Mala Hora as La Mala Mujer, which means the evil woman. A man from Motozintilla, a part of Mexico, was walking to...
This is Mexico, not New Mexico?
Yeah, but this, I mean, it comes from Mexico as well.
Okay.
So he was walking to Amantenango to visit his girlfriend. As he was walking, he ran into a woman on the road, so they're just walking, they're not driving.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked, it will take 4 hours to walk this route. It's a long-ass walk.
So that says that maybe the story is not true.
People walk long distances, Mackenzie. The Oregon Trail, the Gold Rush, people in horse-drawn carriages, nope, cattle pulling things. I'm just going to keep going. People walk long distances.
Okay.
So as he was walking, he ran into a woman on the road who looked just like his girlfriend.
Mm.
Since you were coming to see me, I came out to meet you, she said. I've brought all my things. Let's run away together. The man was so excited and couldn't believe his luck when he said, Are you serious?
They don't even live in the same town.
Yes, they're going to run away together.
The story is stupid.
You're stupid. I'm just kidding.
No, you're not.
Because he was so excited, he looked closer at his girlfriend. That is when he noticed something. Her toes were backwards.
Ew.
You're not my girlfriend, he said. Of course I am, she
How
said.
does one casually just notice someone's toes are backwards? Like, I don't look down at someone's feet when I'm talking to
From
them.
now, we're going to toes the right way? Okay, I can keep talking. Of course I am, she said. Now let's go before my father finds us. The man insisted that she lied, but she denied it. No, you don't fool me, said the man. He then slipped a blindfold on the woman and started hitting her until she ran away.
What the fuck?
It keeps going this way, don't you worry. The next day, the man went to a priest with a needle that he asked the priest to bless. That
A
night,
needle?
Yep.
Why?
He'll get to it.
Oh my God.
That night, he again walked on the road to Amantenango. He again ran into La Mala Mujer, who was posing as his girlfriend. She gave the whole spiel again, but this time the man pretended to believe her and they ran away together. As they were running away, they arrived at a little glen where they decided to stop and rest for a bit. The man pretended to feel romantic and started to lean in to embrace his girlfriend. But as they sat down, without her noticing, the man slipped the needle beneath her. When she sat on it, it did the trick and stuck her to the spot.
Ouch.
She wasn't able to get up, so the man ran away and went back to the priest. The next day, after dawn, the man and the priest returned, and La Mala Mujer was right where she had been left, with her hair streaming all over her. The priest told the man to hit her with a branch, and he would pray. Right as the priest started praying, the man lifted the branch, and the woman vanished.
So let me get this straight.
Yes.
He has a priest bless a needle
Uh-huh.
that he then has her sit on.
Yep.
That she supposedly gets stuck on.
Yep.
Only for them to come back. And just when he's about to whack her with a branch,
She vanishes.
she dips out. That's when she gets that ability back?
I didn't even think of that. That's really funny. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And he walks 4 hours to see his girlfriend. Sure. If he wanted to, he would, ladies.
Right. If he wanted to, he would. So this next tale took place in 1979 when New Mexico was much smaller and had many country roads. Many of those roads would lead out to the fields away from any light pollution, where kids would go with blankets to gaze up at the sky and look for shooting stars. A girl, Cassie, and her boyfriend Brian were no different and had grabbed a blanket and headed out to do some stargazing. Stargazing. At some point,
Stargazing chill.
At some point, they fell asleep and woke up again in the middle of the night. Knowing their parents would kill them for missing curfew, they hurriedly grabbed their blanket and started making their way back to Brian's truck. When Cassie and Brian made their way back to the truck, Brian cursed out loud and told Cassie that he didn't have his keys, that he must have dropped them on their walk. He told her to wait there by the car and he would retrace their steps to try to find his keys. Casey watched as Brian walked back to the field, hearing him kicking the ground in frustration trying to find his keys. She stared back up at the stars waiting, but soon enough, she looked back to the field that was now very quiet. That is when she saw Brian, standing with his arms at his sides. He was shaking slightly, staring ahead at another section of brush. She followed his gaze. There was a black mass floating there. This is where we have our cotton ball. The mass seemed to suck in any available light around it. She then saw Brian take 2 steps towards the figure. Tears were coming down his cheeks. Tears of fear. Suddenly,
How do you know?
That's what Cassie said.
Okay.
Suddenly, the black mass charged towards Brian and enveloped him. A scream like no scream Cassie had ever heard pierced the air, and she dropped to her knees as they buckled from under her. Eventually, the screaming stopped, and the next thing Cassie knew, she was waking up to the morning sun. She stood up and sprinted to the nearest road, where she was able to flag down a car and explain that something had attacked her boyfriend.
You have a truck.
They can't find the keys. So they can't start the truck because they don't have the keys.
Learn how to hotwire.
Yes, let me hotwire this car real quick.
I mean,
The sheriff was called, and when he arrived to where Casey had last seen Brian, they found Brian's body. His skin was blue, but he had no bruises on him. Cassie was taken into custody, where she explained everything from the night before about the black mass and Brian screaming. To the officers, it sounded quite unbelievable.
she killed him.
No, I don't think so. Because how would she have killed him? There were no strangulation marks on his neck, but he looked blue. Like he
the
had been
desert gets
strangled.
really cold at night.
No. The coroner's office found that Brian had died of
Maybe she sat on him.
She's not fat.
You don't have to be fat.
The coroner's office.
Maybe she covered his nose.
Mackenzie?
What? She could cover his nose and mouth.
So the coroner's office found that Brian had died of asphyxiation, and there were no marks on his body or neck to show how he had died. It was as if he had just not taken another breath.
Mm-hmm.
Cassie was viewed as a suspect for a while, but she was ultimately released. As she was leaving the sheriff's office, an old lady with tan, wrinkled skin pulled her aside with a sad look in her eyes. She asked Cassie what time of night it was that she saw the mass. Cassie said she didn't know, but it was in the middle of the night. The woman pressed, asking if it was 3 a.m. 3 a.m. to midnight is when this usually happens.
Sure.
Cassie shrugged. The lady then said a small incantation under her breath in a language that Cassie didn't speak, but one thing she did hear was La Mala Hora. The lady shook her head and walked away.
I think Cassie murdered her boyfriend.
The person who told... You always think someone murdered someone.
Well,
Like that one story we had with the friends going hiking, you're like, the friends killed a friend. This one...
that one was so fucking plausible, it's not even funny. And the fact that that wasn't even considered is insane to me. At least these people were like, you was just you two, and now you're telling me a giant cotton ball killed your boyfriend?
The person who told the story ended it with, quote, "Sometimes La Mala Hora can be seen as early as midnight because the spirits that take advantage of La Mala Hora are strongest either at 3 a.m. or when they know someone is about to die at midnight.
Maybe they're sleepy.
You see, if you ever begin to see something black and with an indescribable form at La Mala Hora, so the bad hour, you must immediately look away. For if you stare too long into the black mass void of smoke and shadow that begins to reveal itself to you, if you stare too long, you'll go mad or worse." The amount of grammar I had to fix in that paragraph, though, was insane.
So that makes it so credible.
Words were missing, words were misspelled. I was like, yo.
Oh, man.
Another vlogger named Sterling went to look for La Mala Hora in the deserts of New Mexico. He and his friend supposedly had a run-in with her, though nothing bad resulted from it. And then
It wasn't her.
I found a Reddit thread.
Mm.
And people who live in New Mexico are saying that they have never heard of this legend. And many are saying that it's a bad retelling of La Llorona. So she's the one who was like by water, seen at night, killed her kids kind of thing. But so many people are like, this isn't a thing. We're afraid to talk about it. No, we're not. This isn't a thing.
That's so funny.
But someone did post about an experience their friend had. So their friend had been driving through New Mexico with her family just past midnight. They saw a smoky object roll in front of the car. They were thankful it didn't transform into a woman in front of them.
Maybe
and
it was
continued.
an on-fire tumbleweed.
No, it wasn't. At least they didn't say it was. But so they continued on. It continued on as a smoky object, never became a woman. The girl said that her aunt was very religious and believed that the smoky object stayed away from the car because of how religious she was, and her religion was radiating out, and the bad thing didn't want to get religionified.
Okay.
So there you have it. There's the tale of La Mala Hora, which may or may not be real. So listeners living in New Mexico, please let us know if you've heard of this or have had any experience with La Mala Hora.
I'm going to go ahead and go with no.
But based on Reddit, it's not a real thing.
Correct.
And because everything you read on the internet is true, so of course Reddit is telling us the truth.
I think in this case, Reddit is more likely correct than not.
Yeah. Because some people are like, I've lived in Mexico my entire life and I have never heard of this.
Yeah, there's too many variations of this thing and what it turns into for it to have a lot of credibility. How can you be a cotton ball, a scary woman, and a horse lady?
It's just whatever form you care to take that day.
That just seems
Whatever
like
mask you want to show the world.
she's already changing the color of her clothes. So, like, if you see the horse face.
Is it that song? You can change your hair, you can change your clothes.
Yeah, Hannah Montana.
Yeah.
Great song. Always find your way back home.
Always Hannah Montana.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe that's her. She's like, today I'm going to be a horse lady. Today I'm going to wear white. Nah, I'm feeling wearing black.
I feel like there definitely could have been ways for Cassie to kill her boyfriend without leaving bruises.
I don't think Cassie killed her boyfriend.
I do.
She was very upset when her boyfriend died.
Sure. I'm sure she was.
I don't think she killed Brian. But yeah, that's La Mala Hora.
Well, that was not a Mal story.
Thank you.
Es bueno.
Muchas gracias.
De nada.
All right, Mackenzie, what tale do you have tonight?
So, you know those situations where someone does something wrong, but when you find out why, you think, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
The State Penitentiary Prison Riot of 1980 is one of those situations. Kind of.
Okay.
Aspects of what happened that day are completely unacceptable and should always be condemned.
Yep.
Other aspects are definitely illegal.
Illegal?
Illegal.
Okay.
But understandable for how things escalated to this situation.
Okay.
The riot of 1980 became one of the most violent prison riots in the correctional history of the United States.
Oh my gosh.
So shout out to the Attorney General at the time for his report on the event and an article written by Phaedra Haywood in 2020. And that's where I got a lot of information from this story. And then, of course, Wikipedia, but they don't put an author for that. So
Right, because anyone could do it.
Right. So major trigger warning. This story contains topics of substance abuse, rape and sodomy, and very graphic descriptions. So please consider when deciding to listen.
Oh gosh.
The Penitentiary of New Mexico, now called Old Main, was originally opened in 1885 and was officially closed down in 1998.
Oh wow, they were open for a good chunk.
Yeah, it's like a new building.
Okay.
So there's still like the State Penitentiary of New Mexico or whatever order those words go in.
Yeah.
But just not specifically this place.
Okay.
So now they have like tours and stuff like that. It was they have used it for movies, and it was the set of The Longest Yard.
Oh.
Yeah, there you go. So there is, like I said, there's a new state penitentiary, but our story is going to focus on this original place. The first riot that ever occurred here was on July 19th, 1922, when prisoners revolted over the facility's overcrowding, poor food, and the use of excessive force.
Okay.
When prisoners refused to return to their cells, guards opened fire, which resulted in the death of one inmate and 5 others were injured.
Oh my gosh.
A second riot occurred on June 15th, 1953, when prisoners protested the use of excessive force. During the siege, inmates captured and held hostage Deputy Warden Ralph Tahash and 12 other guards. This incident resulted in the death of 2 inmates and several others were wounded. So far, no guards have been killed.
When you're talking about this, I'm watching Orange is the New Black, and there's
Again?
It's the same time going through it. It's just sometimes if I'm like, do I want to watch that or do I want to read Harry Potter for the 900th time? I choose Harry Potter. Anywho, that's not the point. The point is, in the season that I'm in, they just finished like the huge prison riot. And so that's all I'm thinking of.
Well, yes, but men.
Well, yes, obviously. But it's like with the whole like excessive force and then like all of that stuff because they were protesting like unfair conditions and excessive force and like because one of the inmates was killed by like a guard. And oh, that scene tears my heart apart.
Yeah. Well, parallels here. A new facility was built in 1956, 11 miles south of the original buildings, which were eventually demolished. The new facility had the capacity for 900 inmates, and by 1980, it was housing about 1,157 men.
1,000?
Mm-hmm.
And how many could it hold?
900.
Wow.
Yeah. As the saying goes, hindsight is 20/20.
Yep.
And there were plenty of warning signs that went ignored by officials in the years, months, and days leading up to the prison riot. Author Roger Morris wrote in his 1983 book, The Devil's Butcher Shop, quote, "The riot was a predictable incident based on an assessment of prison conditions." As I mentioned earlier, the prison was only able to hold around 900 inmates and was sitting over 1,100 at the beginning of 1980.
Jeez.
First-time violent prisoners were housed with repeat violent prisoners, and many were housed in overcrowded, unsanitary dormitories. The quality of food was less than to be desired, which was only perpetrated by the prevalence of cockroaches and mice.
Ugh.
Needless to say, intestinal disease was a common occurrence. A visiting warden once reported that the penitentiary was one of the filthiest institutions he had ever seen. Tensions among inmates and guards continued to rise when educational and recreational programs were stopped, which caused prisoners to be locked down for long periods of time. Following a change in prison leadership in 1975, the penitentiary experienced a shortage of trained correctional staff. A subsequent investigation by the state attorney general's office found that the prison officials began forcing prisoners to become informants in a strategy known as the snitch game.
Ugh.
The report said that retribution for snitching led to an increased incidence of inmate-on-inmate violence at the prison in the late 1970s, which,
Duh.
Roger Morris detailed an incident that occurred in 1976 when there was a work strike in response to the prison's poor conditions. In an attempt to take control of the situation, Deputy Warden Robert Montoya authorized the use of tear gas against the striking inmates.
Ugh.
They exited the dormitory coughing from gas and, quote, "They were stripped naked and run 100 yards down the central corridor through a gauntlet of officials who beat them with ubiquitous axe handles."
Oh my gosh.
Called the Night of the Axe Handles, the incident was corroborated by several eyewitnesses, including some officials themselves, and resulted in serious injuries as well as a federal lawsuit still pending in 1982, naming Deputy Warden Montoya
Yeah.
and a senior guard captain among the assailants.
Wow.
The Attorney General, Jeff Bingaman, which is who wrote the report that I got a lot of the information from, would later write in his report about the riot, quote, "Throughout its history, the penitentiary of New Mexico has suffered from neglect. The New Mexico prison has always waited at the end of the line for public money, and elected officials have turned their attention to the ugly problems of the penitentiary only when the institution has erupted in violence and destruction. Lack of space, inadequate programs, and understaffing have all been part of the prison's tradition." So, from the article that I mentioned before, the author gave a really great timeline of events, like pretty detailed.
Okay.
So I'm going to go through that timeline.
And which riot is this one?
The 1981, the one that like is the focus for today.
So this isn't the axe handle one?
No, that had already happened like in
gosh.
the 70s. There was also a guy, I forget what his name was, but he kind of like put a lot of the grievances like into this document. I mean, he wrote it and tried to bring it like to court and stuff. And it eventually ended up being like after the riot was done, it eventually did kind of make it through the courts and stuff, but it would take years. Even after this occurred, it would take years for it to go through and for like pretty much the changes happened because they were forced to.
Yeah.
Which this is why here we are.
Yep.
So everything started Friday, February 1st, 1980.
Okay.
So at 8:30 p.m., inmates were drinking a home brew in dormitory E2, what'll be really cool about this is not only the articles, but also like the report from the Attorney General has a lot of pictures of like what happened, yes, but it's kind of like in grainy black and white, so it's hard to tell. But it has a lot of diagrams of the prison and things like that.
Cool.
And there's one really great diagram that has like timestamps and where everything happened.
Oh, that's cool.
So I'll definitely be able to include that.
Yeah.
So they're drinking this home brew.
Yuck.
By 10:30 p.m., inmates are drunk, loud, and angry and begin talking about taking over the prison.
Oh.
The other thing to note, too, is days leading up to this, there were rumors
that they were going to
that there was going to be a riot. Like there was going to be.
Oh, so it's already been in the talk. Like people have already been talking about it.
There was, I think it was the prison psychologist was like, hey, this is going to happen. Like, I know this is going to happen. They didn't take him seriously. And there was even, like, later on, people that, like, worked in, like, the administration office and, like, other things like that, like, they reported later, not now, but they reported later that, like, there were some inmates that would say to them, like, "Hey, when I tell you don't come to work this day, don't come to work this day."
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Did any of the people listen and not
I
come to
think
work?
so. I think so.
But it's also like, if someone is telling you, like, "Don't come to work this day," tell someone.
Right.
Be like, "Hey, they told me not to come to work this day." That's kind of concerning.
Yeah. So, the thing is, though, is this all happened so late at night, early in the morning that those people, like, admin office and things
Like,
like
wouldn't
that,
have been there
they wouldn't have
anyways.
been there.
Yeah, but ugh.
Yeah. So, they knew this was coming. Like,
Mhm.
rumors had been started, inmates were talking about it, like, it was being
It's a thing.
discussed.
Mhm.
Yes. So, it shouldn't have been a shock when it actually happened.
Right.
So, like I said, 10:30 PM, inmates are drunk, loud, and angry and talking about taking over the prison. So, Saturday, February 2nd, 1980 at 1:09 AM. So only a few hours later.
Yeah.
But still. Guards began to close the south wing. So the routine for the count began with 2 officers entering the dormitory. The third officer was given all the other officers' keys and locked the door to the dorm until the officers are ready to come out. So they do the head count, but they can't leave the door unlocked and they don't want to have their keys on them.
Yes.
Yeah. Because of overcrowding, the 2 officers went down 2 sides of a center aisle consisting of single beds the length of the dorm room.
Okay.
As one officer looked down to the right between the rows of bunk beds, the other officer looked to the left between the rows of bunks.
Okay.
At the last second, the shift commander entered E2 to help with the count, and after he was let in, the officer outside the door did not latch it.
So there are 3 officers inside, 1 outside.
Yes.
Okay. Officer outside did not latch. 3 inside are inside without keys.
Yes.
Okay.
The prisoners on the bunks by the door had to keep the door open, otherwise all they would accomplish was the taking of 3 officers locked in their own dorm.
Right.
So they, like, made sure, too, that, like, because the door didn't latch, that it also stayed open so that they could take those guys and then also open the door and barrel out of there.
Well, then how are they keeping the door open?
That I don't know.
Okay.
I'm assuming because this...
I don't think I'm picturing this correctly.
So picture, like, a large space
Okay.
with a bunch of beds.
Oh, so, like, the prisoners are just, like, kind of milling around.
Yeah, they're not in cell.
Oh,
They
okay.
are out in the open.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking that they're, like, in cell rooms and, like...
No.
Oh.
No, it is, like, a big open space.
Oh, no.
And there's beds on beds on beds.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
One...
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah. I don't know if... I forget which article it was, but somewhere I read that it was so dark in there that, like, if you were the officer on the outside, you would have no way of telling who was an officer and who was an inmate.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking of it as Orange is the New Black now that you say that, because they have, like their neighborhoods are just big open rooms that have, like, bunk beds in, like, kind of, like, cubicles in a way.
Yeah.
But, like, short walls, but there's, like, a ton of bunk beds in there.
Yeah. It's like that, but
So it's
without the walls.
Open area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Think of, like, a big, like, orphanage or something with just, like, a bunch of beds
Okay.
that people are sleeping on. Like,
Gotcha.
there's no division.
Yeah.
Now, there are some sections of the prison that have cells and they are broken off, but because of overcrowding, there's this big dormitory that just has all these beds that people sleep in.
Alrighty. All right.
Okay.
We're getting the picture. We got this.
All right. So at 1:40 a.m., inmates jump guards in dormitory E, and the guards are stripped, blindfolded, and beaten.
Ugh.
1:45 a.m., prisoners take 4 more officers hostage. So they're now, like, barreling through.
They're going through.
They're grabbing anybody they can find, unlocking people, all that kind of good stuff.
So they got the keys.
1:57 a.m., officers in the control center and a on foot patrol begin to hear inmates over a walkie-talkie. 2 officers in the mess hall observe a mob of inmates loose in the main corridor, kicking and pushing a naked man with a belt around his neck. So also when they went to the control center, I can't remember if I put this in here or not, but just in case I didn't, it's supposed to be, like, bulletproof. Like, they're not, and eventually it gets broken with, like, I think a fire extinguisher. And so that gets taken over.
Yeah.
Like, pretty much the whole place is taken over. Like, there's no hiding.
Ugh.
1:58, so a minute later, word of the riot begins to spread among staff. An infirmary tech locks himself and 7 inmates in a portion of the prison hospital ward. So, other thing to note, not all prisoners were involved.
Okay.
In fact, it was a very small faction of people that participated.
Okay.
A lot of the other inmates, which we'll get to later, tried to get out, tried to help people,
Mhm.
did not want anything to do with it.
Yeah. I feel like I'd be in that group where I'm like, let me just go to my bunk.
Yeah. Yeah. Or out of the way.
Yeah.
So at 2 a.m., a group of 75 to 100 inmates reaches the Penitentiary Control Center and begins hitting the glass as 2 correction officers flee. And then they're able to, like, take control.
I get out of like 1,200 people, 100 isn't a large number.
Right.
But thinking of 100 people,
Versus 2.
that's a lot.
Yeah. And I think I also read somewhere, too, that, like, even though they had control of the control center, they
Mhm.
didn't know how to use it.
Yeah.
So it didn't quite help.
Didn't do much.
Yeah. At 2:01, an officer tells the control tower to call state police. At 2:02, inmates have control of the facility.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it started 1 a.m. Within an hour.
Wow.
They had control of the facility.
That's insane.
And there were also reports, too, that there were certain, like, entrances into different sections that weren't closed properly and, like, locked properly. So it was really easy for them to go between sections.
I wonder if it wasn't locked properly just because at some point the guards just become like complacent with their jobs and they're like, eh.
Yeah, well, there's lack of training and security and all that kind of good stuff.
And when there's overcrowding, you're just trying to get people in there.
Yep. Events spiraled out of control within cell blocks in large part due to the actions of 2 gangs. First, there were the Chicanos, who protected each other and dished out targeted retribution for specific grudges.
Oh.
The other gang was loosely labeled the Aryan Brotherhood.
Oh, God.
Right. And was led by some of the most dangerous inmates who by this time had been released from segregation in cell block 3. So that's where they keep, like, the most dangerous people ever.
Oh.
They decided to break into cell block 4, which held prisoners labeled as informers. This cell block also housed inmates that were mentally ill, convicted of sex crimes, or otherwise vulnerable. In total, it held about 96 prisoners.
Okay.
By 2:15 a.m., the psychological ward is set on fire. City and state police begin arriving. Author G. Hillerman wrote in her 1982 book, The Hate Factory, quote, "In minutes, the inmates had themselves a candy store of every kind of downer you can think of. There were also hypodermic needles and syringes for those who liked a more potent hit."
Oh, no, no, no.
By 2:30, there was a lot of drug overdoses.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah. By 2:30 a.m., maximum security prisoners in cell block 3 are set free and form an informal death squad with other violent inmates from E2 who had sparked the riot. By 2:35, Governor Bruce King is alerted. I included what he, like, said, like, in his book because it's just so, like, one of those things of just, like,
Yes.
like the ladies that went to space, like, just out of touch, you know, and just, like, you should have chosen a different word because he goes,
Right.
so he recalls in his book later, which he called The Cowboy in the Roundhouse.
Okay.
Quote, "About 2 a.m. on Saturday, February 2nd, the emergency phone beside my bed in the mansion rang, startling me
Oh, my
awake."
goodness. Startling me awake from my 100 thread count sheets.
Right? Like, that's what it felt like. I'm like, just say it woke you up. Like, why do you have
Right.
to throw mansion in there?
To show that he lived in a mansion.
Right. It was Chief Martin Vigil of the state police, and my stomach nodded in apprehension. "Governor, we've lost contact with the penitentiary," he told me. When we call there, we don't get any answer. I thought I'd better alert you. It's possible we have a serious problem. Duh.
Right, thank you.
2:40, King alerts National Guard General Franklin Miles. At 3 o'clock, according to officials, the first inmate is killed.
Oh, see, I was wondering when that was going to happen.
So around 3 a.m. Saturday, inmates and hostages hear pleas of "no era yo," it wasn't me, and "no lo hice," meaning I didn't do it, coming from a cell on the basement level of cell block 3. The man shouting the denials, Archie Martinez, was probably the first to die in the riot. Inmates later dragged his body out into the yard. They killed Juan Sanchez and Lawrence Cardone and left them in the cells in the segregation unit. One of the victims was shot in the face at close range with a tear gas launcher. 4 a.m., the so-called death squad begins cutting through a jammed door of cell block 4, where informants are held, with an acetylene cutting torch. So they're basically, like, burning it open.
Oh.
Prisoners in the cell block frantically try to signal to state police outside for help, but they don't help them. Like, there's an emergency exit door
Mm-hmm.
that's, like, in the back or whatever, and they don't help them.
Right.
I don't know. It seemed like maybe it was a strategic move of, like, if we open it, like,
Then it's opening the outside.
yeah. But it's also, like, I think by then was surrounded. I don't know. It's weird, but it kind of seemed like they could have done something and they chose not to. I'm unsure of why.
And Orange is the New Black. They didn't
A
go in.
fictional TV show.
They didn't go in immediately because they were first trying to get negotiations. They also had hostages. So they were
Yes.
trying to make sure the hostages are okay. So like the prisoners are pretty much like, if you come in, like they're not going to be okay.
They haven't gotten quite to that point yet with like the hostages and like negotiations and stuff. So I don't know. It was a weird. The way it was written was weird because I'm like, it kind of sounds like you're trying to say that they asked for help, they could have gotten help, but they chose not to help them. They chose not to help them because of
XYZ.
Exactly.
Well, in my fictional TV show, they had the reasons why.
Okay. Some of the most brutal murders and mutilations of the uprising take place between 4 to 7 a.m. And we're going to go over some of them.
Of course we are.
When the cell block opened, victims were pulled from their cells to be tortured, dismembered, hanged, or burned alive.
Just by other like inmates?
Yeah, so these are like...
Why? Is this the bad cell?
No, so cell block 4, well, depends on how you look at it. Cell block 4 is the informants. So a lot of these people were getting like revenge on snitches and stuff.
Yeah.
There was also the sex offenders.
Like, okay.
Right.
You can take them.
And then the mentally ill.
See, that part's the sad one.
And nonviolent offenders.
See, those are the sad ones.
Yeah. So...
Yeah. I mean, nothing's good. We're not condoning any violence, but I feel bad for like those who are mentally ill or those who are nonviolent offenders.
Yes.
Because they're just there to do their time.
Right.
The other ones, like the informants, again, they're not bad, but like they turned against people.
And I don't know.
The sex offenders, I'm like, go for that.
And I don't, it didn't specify too whether it was the nonviolent offenders and things like that also turned informant, or if it was violent offenders turned informant. Like they didn't distinguish. It's just that's where they were held separate from everybody else.
I see. Ugh, okay.
Yeah.
So this is the one that they're going in and pulling the people out of.
Yeah.
Okay.
12 of the 96 prisoners in cell block 4 had been identified as snitches and brutally murdered.
Oh my God.
In total, 16 inmates were killed in cell block 4, with the most of the violence committed by noon that day. There are hack marks on the concrete floor where one man was beheaded. There is also a smoky black stain where another inmate had his eyeballs gouged out before he was burned to death with a welding torch.
Where'd they get a welding torch?
I don't know, but it's what they also used to get, like...
I don't know why that part didn't come to me at the moment when you said it the first time.
Like, that's how they burned their way in.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you have the keys, there's probably, like, the different places where you can do, like, the jobs and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like my fictional TV show told me.
During an edition of BBC's Time Watch program, an eyewitness described the carnage in cell block 4. He saw an inmate held up in front of a window. He was being tortured by using a blowtorch on his face and eyes until his head exploded. Another story was about Mario Urioste, who was jailed for shoplifting.
Ugh.
He was originally placed by officers in a violent unit where he was gang raped by 7 inmates.
Oh my God.
Mario had filed a lawsuit against his rapist, so prison officials had housed him in cell block 4 for his own protection.
Oh no.
Urioste was one of the targets for revenge. His body was found hanged, his throat cut, and his dismembered genitals stuffed into his mouth. Men were killed with piping, work tools, and crude homemade knives called shanks. One man was partially decapitated after being thrown over the second-tier balcony with a noose around his neck. The corpse was then dragged down and hacked up, which is where you can see the hack marks on the floor. A fire had been set in the gymnasium to burn a pile of corpses, but had gotten out of control and burned through the roof.
How did they make a fire so big?
I think because of what the gym pieces of what it was made out of, it ended up burning so hot that it ended up like going up and burning a hole in the roof.
Jeez.
Yeah. 5:25 a.m., the first inmate is released with injuries inflicted by a meat cleaver. A guard who had been harbored by sympathetic inmates is released in inmate clothing.
So how are they being released? Like,
so some are escaping. If they're released, I think they go through like the main thing, like entrance, whatever.
Okay.
Surrounding inmates were describing a scene of murder and torture inside the penitentiary. And during radio conversations, one inmate threatened to kill the protection cases or snitches housed in cell block 4 if demands are not met. Quote, all them guys in cell block 4 that you've been using, well, we've got them in the sack just in case you don't cooperate, the inmate said. Eyewitnesses that you call the snitches over here, they're going to start getting shanked.
Oof.
While most of the penitentiary was being ransacked, flooded, smeared with blood, and gutted by fire, some inmates retreated to E2 where they drank coffee and watched television. Just chilling.
I mean, I'm going to go to the place where I'm going to be safe.
Right. 6:40 a.m., a prisoner demands to speak with the media and offers to set up a negotiations table. 6:45 a.m., prisoners demand to see Warden Jerry Griffin or Governor King within 4 hours. By 7 a.m., 84 prisoners escape through a window and surrender.
Wow.
By 7:02, a badly beaten guard hostage is released. Hostage officers kept in the South Wing suffered the most violence at the hands of the inmates. Inmates beat and kicked several officers repeatedly during the ordeal. Some were stabbed and sodomized. By comparison, rioting inmates treated the officers in the North Wing relatively well. They gave the officers food, coffee, and cigarettes and protected them from the attack by other inmates.
Oh.
Though unharmed, the North Wing officers' captivity was the longest of the ordeal.
Honestly, okay.
No
I'd
guards
be there
died,
for the
by the way.
longest if I'm not getting hurt.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's good that no guards died, but still sad that inmates did.
Yeah. 7:30 a.m., the first 50 New Mexico National Guard troops arrive. By 8:30 a.m., 20 inmates escape the prison and surrender. 8:58, Governor King talks to prisoners by phone and promises to give them access to journalists and not to storm the prison if hostages are kept alive. If demands are met, prisoners say they'll give the facility back by mid-afternoon.
Oh, wow.
So these were the inmates' demands. I mean, they were pretty straightforward.
Right.
They wanted federal officials brought to the prison to ensure no inmates would be retaliated against in the aftermath of the revolt. They wanted prisoners reclassified so first-timers with short sentences were no longer housed side by side with violent lifers.
Okay.
They wanted to end an overcrowding and harassment by guards, and they wanted better food, better educational and recreational facilities, and a new disciplinary committee.
Honestly, all of those are valid.
Reasonable.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, understandable how it escalated to this situation.
Not great.
But there were some people that like truly didn't give a shit about that and just wanted to get their revenge on the
Right.
people who they considered snitches.
Mm-hmm. Again, just like my fictional TV show. There were some people who just had these demands that they wanted met. And then there were some people who were just like, I'm just going to run free because there's so much going on right now.
Yeah. 9:15 a.m., the governor arrives at the penitentiary. The damage and killing was done by relatively few inmates. Most inmates tried only to escape the chaos. Some worked to rescue other inmates, and some protected hostage guards. Wounded convicts and those overdosed on drugs were carried out into the yard by their fellow inmates. Some inmates manned the stretchers as an excuse to escape the building, but others returned inside each time and performed the task repeatedly.
Wow.
One inmate named Doc worked as a paramedic inside the prison, dressing wounds of prisoners and hostage guards alike.
Wow.
Quote, I'm over here checking Lieutenant Anya, the inmate Doc said over a two-way radio at 11:35 a.m. on Saturday. I think Anya's got a concussion, and I think he's got a busted rib, and I know he's got a heart condition and needs to be moved. He needs to be taken out of here.
Oh.
By noon, an inmate negotiator demands to see media members and threatens to decapitate prisoners if the demand is not met.
Whew.
By 1:10 p.m., 30 more inmates surrender. 1:25, about 20 more inmates surrender. By 2:58 p.m., inmates meet with prison officials. By 3:20 p.m., the governor's notified hostages are still alive. Attorney General Bingham later wrote, quote, knowledge of inmates being killed did not change the negotiation process. The official strategy continued to be stall for time and try to talk convicts into releasing hostages, he added. Although correctional officers knew that some of the guards were being beaten, stabbed, and sodomized, they clung to the hope that negotiations could at least save the hostages' lives. 5:10 p.m., an inmate threatens to kill guards. 6:50 p.m., the first body is brought out of the prison by inmates. 7:02 p.m., the prisoner asks for face-to-face negotiations and access to the media and an attorney. 7:12 p.m., an inmate negotiator meets briefly with prison officials and a radio journalist and is told journalists will bring a camera into the facility the next day for the news conference the prisoners have been demanding. 11:25, a beaten guard is released and tied to their chair. So, on Sunday, February 3rd, 1980 at 1:07 a.m., negotiations are halted until later in the morning. 2:30 a.m., New Mexico Corrections Secretary Adolph Stans arrives.
Why name your child Adolf?
I don't know.
Not a good name.
No. So now we fast forward to 8 a.m. A head count reveals about 800 inmates are outside the prison. Early Sunday morning, inmates were pouring out of the institution, causing one inmate to say over the radio, quote, what the hell is going on? Where's everybody sneaking out of this place from? Inmates were escaping and surrendering through every unguarded opening in the building. At 8 a.m., the National Guard commander, who had taken another head count of surrendered inmates, reported that there were approximately 800 inmates outside the riot-torn walls.
So then there's about, what, like 400 still inside?
2. 3.
Okay, so 1,100 inside.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if 800 are out, so it's about 3. Yeah.
Math, yeah.
Yeah, math. 10 a.m., inmate negotiators meet with a TV crew and prison officials. 10:55 a.m., a hostage escapes with the help of inmates. 12:34, the beheaded body of a mentally ill inmate, Paulina Paul, is brought out.
A woman?
No.
Oh,
Unless
okay.
that's just the person's name.
Oh, okay.
1:26 p.m., the final 2 hostages are released, and 1:30, state police and Santa Fe police enter and secure the facility. So about 36 hours total.
Wow.
A few inmates were prosecuted for crimes committed during the uprising, but according to author Roger Morris, most crimes went unpunished.
Wow.
The longest additional sentence given to any convict was 9 years. State officials brought criminal charges against some of the inmates involved in the uprising, but out of nearly 50 indictments, most resulted in plea bargains, many of which added little or no jail time to the offenders' existing sentences.
Wow.
17 of the 33 homicides were not prosecuted at all.
I bet because at that point it's kind of hard
Yeah, that's true. That's a good
to
point.
figure out who did what.
Yeah. Roger Morris wrote in his 1983 book, The Devil's Butcher Shop, and that prosecutors obtained jury verdicts in only 2 of the remaining 16 murder cases. So,
Wow.
only 2 were ever convicted.
Yeah.
Quote, 3 years after the carnage and the conclusion seemed inescapable, in stark terms of proof of punishment, many, if not most of the men who rampaged, raped, tortured, murdered, and mutilated at the Santa Fe riot got away with it, Morris wrote. Stunned legislators appropriated more than $100 million to clean up the mess and build new prisons, and officials began a years-long process of implementing reforms, in large part because they were forced to by the federal consent decree based on, this is the guy that I was talking about earlier, who wrote, like, essentially a legal list of grievances to try to go through this system to deal with it correctly.
Yep.
So a consent decree based on Dwight Duran's legal action years before the riot occurred. I think it was like 1976, 77 that he tried to get this going. And I know at one point he was able to meet with a federal court, but his demands were still ignored.
Of course.
A total of 68 claims were filed in an effort to recover damages for the deaths and injury of inmates. Of the 124 inmates for whom compensation was sought, 47 cases were settled and 77 were dismissed for various reasons.
Wow.
But Bingham wrote in his report that not everything that was destroyed could be completely fixed. Quote, the penitentiary can be repaired and even a bureaucracy can be repaired, Bingham wrote. But the men who, day by day, for year after year, have to look over their shoulder for the man with the knife, who lack enough opportunity to make decisions in their daily lives that they forgot how to decide. These men cannot be repaired. They are forever broken by a system designed to correct them.
Aww.
In conclusion, the 1980 New Mexico Prison Riot was the most violent prison riot in U.S. history. It ended with a total of 33 deaths of inmates and hundreds of injuries. The riot led to reforms and updated training, but at what cost? Like I always say, it is better to be proactive than reactive. And that is the 1980 New Mexico Prison Riot.
Ugh.
It's bad.
That's real bad.
It's really bad. Yeah.
A lot of these things, too, it's like, okay, if we had already had better conditions, things like this wouldn't happen.
Correct. So it's like, again, not condoning it, not saying what they did is okay, especially a lot of the revenge that they took on fellow inmates. Like, those people clearly had their own agenda, which I think kind of took away from
the message of it all.
Which, like, in their defense, they did try to go about it in a legal way and they were ignored.
Right.
You know, and
it's like you tried to do it the right way.
Right.
But nothing changed the right way. So.
And a lot of times people end up focusing on, well, but then they did this. And it's like, you're right. No one's saying that was okay.
Right.
No one is saying that is how it should have been handled. But on the flip side of things, you push someone and push someone and push someone, they're going to snap.
And when they did it the right way, you didn't do anything about it. Right. So it's like, so what other way do they have?
Right.
The wrong way.
You know, and it's
the way you don't like.
Right. It's unfortunate that it led to that, but look what happened. Things changed.
Right.
The reforms were put in place, better training, educational services, all that kind of good stuff.
That's why you sometimes got to fight for the things that you need.
Right.
That are right.
So it's like, it worked, unfortunately. And so when these situations keep happening where violence becomes the answer,
Mm-hmm.
but then it ends up working,
Right.
it gets harder to make that argument that violence is never the answer. It
Right.
shouldn't be the answer.
It shouldn't be the
It
answer.
shouldn't be what people have to resort to.
But sometimes it is.
But when you don't listen, when people are trying to deal with it the, quote, proper way,
Mhm.
you don't leave people with much choice.
Right. No, absolutely.
So,
I mean, we could go into the whole like private prison system and
and
all
you
the
could
issues with that.
you could put this idea and apply it to anything that needs any sort of reform.
Yeah.
Like yes, we're talking about a specific situation, but the idea of not listening to a group of people who are trying to make change
Mm-hmm.
to better the environment that they're in just because they're a marginalized group.
Right.
And then they resort to, well, if you're not going to listen to me, I'm going to make you listen to
I'm
me.
going to do it the other way. Yeah.
Right. And then that works.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want people to do?
Why are they going to keep doing it the other way that's been ignored?
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, either stop ignoring people and then it won't lead to this shit.
That's the main answer there.
Treat people with dignity and respect. And I'm talking not just prisons. I'm just in a very general sense.
Generalized.
But even prisoners have rights.
Yeah.
And so that was what the consent decree was all about, was that their civil rights are being violated.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, a lot of what happened, not okay. The way they went about things, not okay.
Correct.
The extreme violence that ended up happening, uncalled for. But the calling attention to this situation in a drastic way, I can understand.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I feel like at some point we're going to have to learn from history. And
well, it's not going too well now.
No, it's not. And I truly think that people are going to end up retaliating and pushing for things this way instead of peaceful protesting and getting what are those things called? Oh my God, it's like a document petition. Jesus. Getting petitions and, calling lawmakers and going the legal way because the system is supposed to work and, it's supposed to work. It's justice, whatever. It's like, no,
it hasn't been working.
It hasn't been working. So.
Well, nice storytelling.
Yeah, it was intense.
Yeah.
Very, very intense.
Oh my God, I could just imagine how absolutely terrifying that was.
I know. It seemed, yeah.
Like terrifying.
And I, based on how it was said, I think that a lot of the informants were nonviolent offenders.
Yeah.
That got stuck with violent offenders, but turned informant to maybe get out of there, be separated from it, which they should have already been separated anyway.
Oof.
And so I think that those revenge killings, I don't think it was anyone that deserved it.
Yeah.
Unless
it doesn't sound like it.
It was like a child molester or two, but they didn't go into that. So I don't know if in the Attorney General's report, if he put he put a list of the inmates who were killed, but I don't know if he put what their crimes were.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I feel like if they did, you would have included it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But on Wikipedia, they have, it's funny because in one article, it's like, oh, you're not allowed to take a picture of the hack marks on the ground, but then Wikipedia supposedly has it. So I don't know if it's legit or not, but yeah.
I mean, it's Wikipedia. There's no way to tell.
Right. So.
Well, nice coverage.
Yeah. But now the place is closed, but you can do tours. I'm sure it's haunted or something.
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, with that much violence and just negativity.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So.
New Mexico.
Yeah. Well, like we always say, it's not happy state.
It's a scary state.
It's a scary state.
So follow us everywhere.
Please.
The Scary State, pretty much everywhere you go.
Yep. Scary State or Scary State Podcast.
Yeah, one or the other.
Either or.
Says Mentente Aterradora.
Estar a salvo.